Hey, YouTube, just getting Facebook warmed up over here, and we'll be getting ready to go here on DawgNation Daily, presented by Meriwether and Tharp. Good to have you with us. You'll notice a couple things. Hold on one second. Hold on one second, y'all. I quite mastered the art of getting these videos fired up simultaneously. Looks like we're on here on Facebook. Looks like we're on here on YouTube. BA's Daddy, thanks for checking in. Frederick Jones, thanks for checking in. Like Dog 1968, good to have you with us as well. Couple things you notice. I'm in a new room in my house. Maybe this really will be my version of MTV Cribs, where like eventually I'll just do the show from like every room that I have. The reason why I moved is because in the office where I was yesterday, it was a little bit dark. So I came into the kitchen here today, try to get a little bit more light. So hopefully everything is going to be okay with that. We'll take a lot of your comments and have, generally speaking, a very good time today. Let me see if I can position that Facebook a little bit better. Let's see if I can try to position that a little bit better. How's that? How's that look for everybody? Everybody feeling good about that? Let's do a little bit of a beard update here. Actually, I'll be very honest. I almost shaved it yesterday because it was aggravating me to death. I mean, it was bothering me. So y'all predicted this would happen. It was itchy. I just sort of felt gross with it. I've never had facial hair before. So it took a little bit of getting used to, and almost waved the white flag yesterday, which is exactly what my kids wanted. I mean, that's exactly what they were hoping would happen. My son told me, he said the beard made me look like I was 55 years old, which he knows exactly how to sort of stick that knife. So I won't want to have it anymore. But listen, the facial hair has become content. And then right now we all are in a need for as much content as we can get. So I'm actually feeling like the beard may have turned a bit of a corner today. I feel like it's not looking too bad, at least on the screens that I'm seeing. It doesn't look super gray as of yet. So for now, we are rocking and rolling with the beard. By the way, speaking of my kids, they have been hard at work on the graphic department again to let you know that today's edition of DawgNation Daily is presented by Meriwether and Tharp, your source for Georgia divorce. My friends over there, listen, they're making the best of the situation like all of us are. And if you know somebody that's going through a divorce process or anything like that, I think the best thing you can do to be a good friend to them is to tell them about Meriwether and Tharp, because one of the cool things they do is provide a lot of free resources, things like that. You can find them online at theatlantadivorceteam.com, their podcasts, their blog posts, their things like that. If you're going through a tough situation like a divorce, you got to have somebody on your side, an advocate, someone that can help rebuild the relationship with your kids and everything else. And that's what Meriwether and Tharp provides. Find them online at theatlantadivorceteam.com. Fancy graphic one more time here for Meriwether and Tharp. We appreciate them being a part of the program. All right, so I'm going to tell you a little bit more in a moment about what we're going to do today on the podcast version of DawgNation Daily. I think I have an interesting topic. I hope it comes off the way that I intend for it to, but I think it's a pretty good topic. Let me just let y'all drive the truck here for a minute, though. I'll take some of your comments. We'll get more into what I think is an interesting evolution around the SEC with some rivalries, and I want to kind of make that, I guess, a little bit more topical for UGA as well, as I just touched my face and set a really, really bad example. Elite GB, thanks for the kind words on the beard. I appreciate that. Louis McElroy says, double up on the beard oil. So I'm embarrassed to say this. I don't know what beard oil is. What does that do? Okay, beard wash and conditioner. And he says it'll never itch again. That's good. Alan V, liking the graphics. I appreciate that. Pete Williams checking in. David Barnes checking in. John Collins checking in. Thanks for being here. Wes Odell as well. The beard oil will stop the itch. Well, that's good to know. That's good to know. New Jack says we're watching this while the White House updates the virus. Yeah, I mean, we obviously know that we're kind of coming to you on this show at the same time that there's a lot of other weird stuff going on in the world. And if you're like me, it's like there's only so much that you can take. I mean, I feel like that when we first started the quarantine thing, I'm like on my phone obsessing over the news all the time. And at a certain point in time, you just can't do that anymore, right? You've just sort of done that all you can do. So our thing is we're going to be here and we're going to try to keep our normal content flow going as much as possible. Like, I'm not an idiot. I obviously know there are really big things going on in the world. I also know that I'm not typically the person that you come to solve the world's most pressing issues. We're more used to talking about linebacker depth charts and things like that. And ultimately, that's what we're going to kind of keep doing. Lane Johnson, thanks for the kind words. I appreciate that. Brandon Howell says, what's changing with our relationship with our rivals? Brandon, we'll get into that. And I'll talk about that in a moment. Let me just take a few more comments here, and then we'll kind of get into that. And I'll do a whole big thing on this today on the podcast as well. So for those of you that are kind of getting used to our new format, and by new, it's only temporary, because once we can get back in the studio, we're going to go back and doing everything the way we used to again. However, when I'm done with the video, I'm running down, getting in my podcast studio, and I'll have to show y'all a picture of this tomorrow. I need to remember to take a picture of it and show you. Like this podcast studio, you think the video setup is weird? Wait till you see like the very, very, I think it's Spartan, that's the word to use, Spartan accommodations that I'm doing the podcast in. But when I do record that, I'm going to do a whole big thing on some rivalries around the SEC. I think there's an example of one that may be getting bigger. I think there's an example of one that may be getting smaller. And I think that leads to a question about how much Georgia's relationship with its rivals could also be evolving, with 2020 looking like a little bit different kind of schedule. So we'll get to that here coming up. John Paul Harris says, I'm no Jesse Palmer. Yeah, I mean, I hate to give credit to a Gator, but Palmer's a handsome dude, man. He makes that beard look good. I guess I can only hope to do about half of that. Gary Westmiller brings up a really good point. The problem with the beard is it makes me want to touch my face. It is true. Like I've tweeted about this a couple times. I'm kind of a weird contradiction in that, for the most part, and some of you have met me before, you've had interactions with me, you've seen me on video. Generally speaking, I'm a pretty laid back guy. However, what's contradictory to that is, while being kind of a laid back dude all the way around, I have a lot of nervous energy. Anybody who's ever spent any time with me knows I can't sit still for 2 seconds. I mean, even right now, I'm kind of rocking back and forth. Like I'm not, even though I'm on TV every day, I don't do TV like Walter Cronkite, right? I'm not sitting straight up and, talking in a 90-degree angle, and I never move my chin or anything like that. I kind of bounce around and move a lot. And that really does lead me to like touch my face a lot. I'm rubbing my fingers through my hair a lot. It's not because I'm vain, I don't think anyway. It's just that I can't stop doing stuff like that. And so I am trying to take it seriously, because everything that I've read says that ultimately, like that's the thing that has the best chance of getting you sick. That ultimately touching your face, putting your fingers in your mouth and all that kind of stuff, like that's the stuff that really has the best chance of getting you sick than anything. It's very hard for me to stop. So y'all ding me every time you see me do it. It reminds me of that video that kind of went viral the other day where like this health professional like lady was giving a very serious press conference about not touching her face. And then 2 seconds later, she touched her face. I mean, she like licked her lip or licked her finger to like move her notes. So yeah, there's some of that going on. Kevin Blackman says that we hope to get this coronavirus thing before the college football season hits. Yeah. Commissioner Greg Sankey talked about that yesterday. He shared a lot of optimism that he thought that'd be the case. Ultimately, I don't think any of us know how this is going to play out, but I guess in a roundabout way, I think optimism's our only choice here. We just got to do the best we can. Randy Hall asked about Eddie. Yeah, I left Eddie in the other room. I gotta figure out some way to do that. Maybe somebody in my household will hear me and bring him over here in just a minute. So let us see what else is going on. Philip Jordan Wells is looking at 1870s prospector. I touched my face again. Yeah, I'll take that as a compliment. I'll absolutely take that as a compliment. All right, what do you want to talk about here? Let's talk about some football. Let's talk about some stuff. I thought it was kind of interesting. I'm going to do this in the podcast today. ESPN had this is one of those things that's kind of like, I guess, sort of good and bad in that they did like a field of 64 college football tournament, like just totally fictitious. Chris Lowe wrote it. The good news is that Georgia was a 3 seed and made it all the way to the national championship game. Bad news is that lost Ohio State. And it's like, it's semi-fun to read about this because your mind can't help but imagine what it would be like to see these games being played. But there's also the sense in which it's a very poor substitute for football. It makes you wonder, like, of all the ways in which our society has advanced from a technological standpoint, how it is that we don't have simulations of what it would look like. Georgia beat, I want to say, Penn State in the semifinal to get to Ohio State. Like, why can't I watch that game on a computer? Like, why can't we simulate that? So Chris Lowe's got that up at ESPN.com. Georgia as a 3 seed in the field of 64 2020 football tournament, made it all the way to the finals, then lost to Ohio State, which goodness knows. The only thing that the society needs less right now is another debate about how things went down with Justin Fields at Georgia. So I would thank ESPN for bringing that back to our consciousness. Kenesha Clark, thanks for checking in. Doug Edenfield says football talk's a good distraction. Stay safe, Dog Nation. Appreciate that, Doug. Christopher Wilson says loves the bracket challenge on Twitter. Yeah, our buddy Connor Riley did this, and I think this is a good topic. I'm going to try to talk to Connor tomorrow, and we'll make that part of the podcast. Honestly, y'all know I'm a little bit tech challenged, and so we've had a couple of interviews the last couple of days with Jeff Sintel. I tried to get an interview today with Mike Griffith. It's going to be on the podcast later on. Hope to do this with Connor tomorrow. And goodness knows if we're going to be quarantined for like the next 6 months, by the time we get this thing done, the show's going to be like pristine. But for now, we're still in kind of the early stages of all of this. So I'll talk to Connor about the field of, is it 64? Did he do a field of 64? Kirby Smart era moments at Georgia. It's pretty good stuff. It's on the Dog Nation Twitter feed. Let me see if I can pull that up. That's a pretty good idea. So I think we'll have some fun talking about that tomorrow. Listen, I think there are two kinds of people in the world, right? There are people who encounter something along these lines, and I apologize for not looking at you. I'm trying to pull up Dog Nation on Twitter. There are people who see a situation like this and make the best out of it, and there are people who see a situation like this and make the worst out of it. They try to find some way to argue more, try to find some way to, just generally speaking, make everybody miserable. And hopefully, all of us and, those that work with us here at Dog Nation are more along the lines of, how can we make this good? So, is it, fun to debate Kirby Smart era moments and talk about your happy memories on that? Yeah, that is pretty fun. So good job by Connor. So normally if we were in the studio, I'd flash this graphic up on the screen. Today, I just have to sort of show it to you here, and you can't see it because there you go. That's the bracket. That's the bracket from Connor. Let's read a couple of these here real quick. Let me make this bigger because I'm 43 years old now. So the 1 seed, Sony Michel's Rose Bowl touchdown. It's going to be hard to beat that, right? I mean, can you possibly beat that? So yeah, it's kind of okay. So what you kind of got here is you got 2017 bracket, a 2016 bracket, a 2018 bracket, and 2019 bracket. So technically, am I right about this? I guess I probably should have read this before the show started. The 1 seed here is Sony Michel. Okay, yes, that's the 1 seed. Is the Sony Michel touchdown. The 2 seed in the bracket is the Light Show versus Notre Dame. Wow. Is that a 2 seed? Is that a 2 seed thing for you? I wonder about that. The 29 seed is the black jerseys. So yeah, we'll do some stuff on this. Connor did a good job on this. We'll do some good stuff on that. The 14 seed, I'd argue that Light Show versus Notre Dame may be too high, but the Yeet Dance from the Florida game, that may be too low. 22 seed, the Baker interception versus South Carolina from 2018. That's pretty interesting. Swift's touchdown in the 2017 SEC championship game. Yeah, this is fun. We're gonna do a lot with that. That's pretty good stuff. Jimmy Hoskins says he's starting to watch UGA football SEC championship games. So what I was kind of thinking about is, I think a lot of people are doing that. I was also kind of thinking, is there a way for us to maybe make a list of some of the less memorable moments? For instance, I was thinking about Tennessee recently, and y'all remember back in 2000 when Georgia stormed the Georgia fans stormed the field after Georgia ended its long losing streak against Tennessee? Like, that's an example of something I'd like to find on YouTube, because that's just kind of a weird Georgia moment, right? It's one of those things of, I think that's the only time in history that Georgia fans have ever torn down the goalpost at Sanford Stadium. I mean, I'm right about that, right? So when we're thinking about going back and rewatching some stuff, it's almost like I want to go back and rewatch some of the things that I barely have a memory of, or maybe my memory's a little bit faded over time because it's just sort of weird. Another example of that is, like, I have a vague memory of a huge celebration when Georgia beat LSU in basketball in 1990. Are y'all old enough to remember this? That LSU basketball team, Mahmoud Abdul-Rauf, known as Chris Jackson at the time, Stanley Roberts, who was a much better college player than people probably realize. Remember Shaquille O'Neal's obviously gone on to be the biggest name from that team, but there were also a couple other, Vernell Singleton, some other really good players in that 90 LSU team. Georgia won the SEC regular season championship that year, beat LSU twice in the process. I have a memory of like this gigantic celebration at Stegman Coliseum after that win. I'd love to find that on YouTube. So there's some of that kind of stuff I'm kind of thinking. Ross Gable also mentioned the 2007 end zone dance against Florida. Yeah, that's certainly there. Willie Gray Jr. says that Jermaine Burton's looking explosive. The video is being released of him. I hope we get to see him this season. Yeah, I think he's going to be exciting to watch in the 2020 season. And obviously our good buddy Terrence Edwards has done a lot of work with Jermaine. They're very close. And so Terrence is really pretty good about, he kind of gives us an update on the guys that he's working with, which is helpful. I mean, fans want to know this kind of stuff, right? And, I think that in a roundabout way, Terrence's relationship with Jermaine has made Jermaine, I mean, listen, if you're a four-star, very high four-star receiver, you sign in a place like Georgia, you're going to be really popular. But because Terrence has done the work that he has with Jermaine Burton, I think in a way it's made him a good bit more popular. So good that Jermaine's getting this stuff out there. Good that Terrence is kind of helping him. And frankly, small group like this, nothing wrong with those guys getting together and doing some of this kind of stuff. That's sort of below that 10-person threshold right now. Honestly, we're lucky as Georgia fans, as a Georgia UGA football community, to have guys like, Terrence and others who work as personal coaches with these guys. Where would they be without that? Especially if they can find a place to get there and do some of that kind of stuff. Davis Painter says you're going back and looking at some cool stuff. That 07 Soldier Boy dance against Auburn's an example of that. And yeah, you got to do that. I kind of try to make my case, the Superman thing. I try to make my case, because when Auburn beat Georgia in 2017, as a way of mocking Georgia, they played the Superman Soldier Boy thing in Jordan-Hare Stadium as a way of kind of mocking Georgia and sort of getting back some revenge on what happened in 2007. And I sort of started to say that should be like Georgia and Auburn's version of like the Little Brown Jug, that whoever wins the rivalry game gets to play Superman by Soldier Boy and do the dance or whatever on the stadium. Georgia seemingly took this a little bit different route. If you're looking for trolling songs, when Georgia beat Auburn in Athens the following year in 2018, I believe they used the, is it Swag Surfin'? Is that the song? I believe they used the Swag Surfin' song as a way of mocking Auburn. So mocking songs have been a little bit of a thing for the Deep South's oldest rivalry. I can only imagine what Shug Jordan must think about that if he's looking down from above or wherever he is. Let's do a little bit more. Shane Guy complimenting the beard. Appreciate that. And I just touched my face again. Sav Atlanta says, how about Cade Brock as the short yardage fullback? I like that idea. Cade's a preferred walk-on, a very popular preferred walk-on. Jeff did a good story with him. I love the idea of a short yardage fullback. I continue to say this. I'm not an X's and O's expert. I've never pretended to be. But if you follow X's and O's experts, they'll point to you how effective NFL teams that use fullbacks are. Fullbacks are just a really effective way of distributing offense in the NFL. I'd love to see Georgia still make some room for some fullback. Matt Rukavina, good to have you here as part of the program. Lou Dog looks like he's gone to a name change over here. It's hard enough for me to keep up with y'all as it is. You start doing the name change. It's a little bit like these Georgia players who change numbers like every 5 days. That gets to be a little hard to keep up with. If you're going to start changing the names on here, that's going to get a little tough. Christy, good to have you here today as well. All right, so let me talk about what I was going to talk about on the podcast today. And y'all tell me if you've kind of noticed this as well. So I was looking at Twitter the other day, and I was noticing that Mike Leach, the Mississippi State coach, and Lane Kiffin, the Ole Miss coach, have had a couple of interactions recently. And I've been kind of told behind the scenes by someone that would know that they may actually even be closer friends than people realize. Now, the Egg Bowl rivalry in college football has been pretty interesting in that normally we kind of think about rivalries being something that exists with fans, right? That rivalries are more about fans, and institutionally, a lot of these rivalries aren't quite as intense as they seem. But one of the reasons why I've always kind of been of the belief that the Egg Bowl might be the biggest rivalry in the SEC, not the most prestigious by a long shot, but the biggest, is because historically the programs have hated each other. The athletic directors have gotten involved, the coaches have gotten involved. But we're in a situation now where when you see Kiffin and Leach joking around on Twitter, it's almost like, well, how is this going to keep the intensity of the Egg Bowl up? I love that thing on Thanksgiving. I've told you before, I try to be a good person. I've given up on being perfect. One of the things that makes me imperfect is all the tacky aspects of the Egg Bowl I find to be ceaselessly entertaining. I wouldn't miss the Egg Bowl for my daughter's wedding. I mean, it is just a fantastic, fantastic TV product, and the degree of hatred these two programs have for each other make it so. But if you got the two coaches, both of them characters in their own right, if they're joshing around on social media, that's impacting something that I enjoy. I need the two coaches at Mississippi and Mississippi State to hate each other. And maybe Kiffin and Leach don't necessarily do that. Now, concurrent to this, I think you see another rivalry. If it is true that the coaching relationship between these two guys is going to make the Egg Bowl a little less of a rivalry than it once was, I think you see another rivalry that's getting to be more intense. You know, Ed Orgeron has been pretty public during all of this, coronavirus quarantine stuff. He's been doing some PSAs, things like that. He even did an interview with a local TV station in Louisiana this week. And in the midst of the interview, where he's basically telling people to stay home and stay safe, the subject of Texas A&M comes up, and the fact that a couple of years ago when A&M beat LSU 74-72, the reporter asked him, hey, did you see Texas A&M was selling some sort of memorabilia? I think it was cups, cups with that score on it. And Orgeron had a jab going back for that. And that's pretty interesting to see, because when you take in new teams in the SEC, you have to find a way to kind of create some rivalry somewhere. And for the most part, a lot of this kind of stuff feels forced. It feels made for TV. I'm a pro wrestling fan. Sometimes a pro wrestling storyline really works. It feels authentic. It feels like it's, it feels like the two guys really have a legitimate beef with each other. And some things just sort of seem forced, contrived, whatever else. There are some SEC rivalries that feel sort of forced and contrived. For instance, Arkansas and Missouri are supposedly rivalries because they kind of share a border with the Ozark Mountains. But are they really rivals? Does anybody really care about Arkansas and Missouri? It's one of those things that's been kind of forced on us, but it doesn't feel like a real rivalry. LSU Texas A&M is kind of another example of that, of we're going to put this game at the end of the season. We're going to make these guys rivals because geographically they're relatively close to each other. But for a while, that just sort of seemed contrived, made for TV. However, LSU and Texas A&M, and I promise I'm getting to a point here, LSU and Texas A&M have kind of turned into a legit rivalry where even in the midst of the coronavirus, you got Orgeron taking a jab at A&M. You got Jimbo Fisher and his staff trying to fight LSU a couple of years ago. You've got a lot of movement back and forth between the two programs. So as maybe one SEC rivalry is diminishing a bit, another one legitimately, authentically is getting bigger. So the question this leads me to, and I'll take more of your comments, is are we also about to see a little bit of an evolution with Georgia's rivals a bit right now? Because one of the cool things about UGA, there's a lot of, resume items that Georgia needs to more fully fill out. You got to win championships, you got to do things like that, get back to college football playout. But one thing you can't deny is that Georgia is truly dominating its rivals. Nice streak against Florida. Goodness knows we talk enough about that. Really very comfortable dominance over Auburn, and Tech's not a factor at all. Georgia's main rivals it's handling with ease. But I wonder what's about to happen with Tennessee. And I don't mean that Tennessee is about to be a threat to Georgia, because I think that in terms of actually beating UGA, it's a long time before a program like Tennessee can dream about that. But just on the basis of when the game's about to be played, it's going to be played in November from now on. That's a little bit more of a primary date on the calendar. It kind of occupies the spot that Auburn used to occupy. I wonder if we're about to see the Georgia-Tennessee rivalry get to be a little bit bigger, feel a little bit more substantial and a little bit more important. I'm wondering if that might go down. And by contrast, I'm kind of wondering if moving the Auburn game up to October, and goodness knows I've talked to y'all about this plenty, that's not something that I'm excited about, really. I'm wondering if by moving that date a little earlier, if it makes the Georgia-Auburn rivalry feel a little bit smaller. I'm going to talk more about this in the podcast later on today, but I think we are in a period of evolution for some SEC rivalries, and I'm curious to see if we're about to see a little bit of a change for some of the Dogs rivalry games as well. Maybe one getting bigger, maybe one getting smaller, and we'll try to figure that out on the podcast a a little bit later on. I want to tell you about my friends at Marlowe's here coming up in just a moment. I have a Marlowe's Tavern gift card that I'm going to talk to you about and why that's important here in a moment. Let me take a few of your comments before we get there, though. James Wade says LSU's going to punch Texas A&M in the mouth again. Yeah, so I mean, listen, there's legitimate bad blood between A&M and LSU right now. It's kind of fun to see. And this is one of those things where I joke about this a lot. Y'all, mostly agree on most of the topics around the SEC. The ones we don't agree on, we end up sort of arguing about for sport. Jimbo Fisher is one of the things that in conversations like this, we seem to end up arguing about a bit because I think he's a good coach. I think he's going to prove that this year. Some of y'all don't. Well, being a real threat to LSU, winning that game this year would be a good way for Jimbo to prove what he's all about. So that's going to make that pretty fun to see. Pretty fun to see. Jazz Jackson asked about some Marlowe's takeout. Yeah, we're going to talk about that just a little bit more here in a moment. Bo Hutchinson says the Munson Scott Howard commentary in the Georgia-Tennessee 2000 celebration is hilarious. See, that's the kind of thing I need right now. Is that on YouTube, Bo? Because I'd love to see that if it is. Or is it easily found online? I'd love to be able to see that. Cam 8026 says moving the Auburn game has bothered me since it was first mentioned. Yeah, me too. And, you know, goodness knows I've beaten y'all over the head with this. This is like my own personal, I don't know, whatever you want to call it. I mean, I just never got a satisfactory answer. Had a chance to talk to Greg McGarity in his office last year, almost exactly a year ago. He was good enough to endure like a series of questions about this because I just can't let it go. It's one of those things that has just never made sense to me. It felt like Georgia was doing too much to help alleviate a problem for Auburn without really solving any problem for Georgia. But at this point in time, at a certain point in time, you just got to move on. And I guess I'm never going to quite get the answer on this that I want. Let's see what else you got going on here. Manuel Infante, thanks for the kind words. He says to keep the facial hair. I'm not going to touch my face. I show it off and keep up the good work. Listen, I tell you, it is a real honor for me. And I don't say this lightly. It's a real honor for me that y'all would still come back and be a part of our show. When I know that a lot of you got a lot going on, you're like me. I got an 8-year-old and a 4-year-old that run around like crazy. I mean, if you've got young kids as well, they're good enough to kind of stay quiet for the most part during this hour. But they're bouncing off the walls every other time. So this is a wild time for a lot of us. So I really appreciate all of you who are spending some of that time with me. It means as much to me, more so to have you kind of come and be a part of this with me. I am so grateful for all of you. I really appreciate that. Chris Brandon on the subject of the Field of 64 Kirby moments. Yeah, so I guess it's 32 moments in all. And it's a pretty good bracket, and it makes for a pretty good debate for us. And so we'll have to look at this more and kind of get a little bit more into that. But it's a pretty good job. If you go to DawgNation on Twitter, you can find that. And since somebody asked about Marlowe's, let me mention this here a moment ago. This is a Marlowe's Tavern gift card. And I'm showing this to you for a specific reason. Obviously, Marlowe's is very well aware of kind of the tough spot a lot of folks find themselves in. I mean, listen, this is the time of year when I want to be on a Marlowe's patio as much as I possibly can be, but obviously we're all kind of dealing with a little bit of a weird situation. Marlowe's is totally with that right now, and they've got a full team dedicated to their to-go business. And you're talking about people that handle food with care and make it very easy for you to kind of get that. You can get your order to go. If you go to marlowstavern.com, you can find out more about that. You can also order over the phone or email. And if you get a Marlowe's Tavern gift card right now, between now and April the 15th, they're going to add 20% to your order. So find out more about this by going to info@marlowstavern.com, info@marlowstavern.com. They'll add a 20% complimentary extra to the gift card that you purchase between now and April the 15th. So I think gift cards are a great way right now to show some love to restaurants that you care about. And certainly Marlowe's is mine. So get your Marlowe's Tavern gift card. Let them know that when everybody's feeling good again, we're going to be rushing back out there to have ourselves a Southern Charmer cocktail on the patio and do all that kind of stuff. And Marlowe's very generous offer right now for the nurse in your life, that physician in your life, someone who may be working in a hospital environment, working long hours there, someone who may be working in a supermarket right now, long hours there. A great way to say thank you is the Marlowe's Tavern gift card. they can add 20% to your order between now and April 15th. Go to info@marlowestavern.com and find out more information about that. All right, let us do a few more comments here. We got some time to do that. I'll also say thanks to our friends at Meriwether and Tharp making all this possible. Let me see if I can get out of the light here and show this to you better off. There you go. Meriwether and Tharp, your source for Georgia divorce. Find them online at theatlantadivorceteam.com, theatlantadivorceteam.com. Doug Rayburn shouting out Mac Strong. I don't know if that's in honor of me mentioning Mac yesterday because I had the autograph of him or not, but Mac was – Georgia's had a few guys. Thomas Davis is an example of that now, Strong back then. Georgia's had a few guys that just played in the NFL forever. Am I wrong about this? It seems like Mac Strong played in the NFL for like 1,000 years. Another guy who's that way, and for all I know, he's still kicking. Remember John Casey, the old Georgia kicker? It seems like he kicked for just a gazillion years, right? There are a few Georgia guys who just had the longest NFL careers in the world. My memory, maybe the Strong career wasn't as long as I remember it being, but it seems like he played forever. Santiago Diarn, good to have you here. Thanks for, by the way, Santiago is one of the ones that was instrumental in getting the beard signed off on here at home. He was one of the ones that kind of started the Twitter campaign on that. So I appreciate that. Mo Morris, another good example of this. Ben Watson. Yeah, Ben, this would be another one of these like slow sports time debates. If you really had like a Olympic style competition between former Georgia football players, not only did Ben Watson play in the NFL for a long time, but he'd be a sneaky good contender to be very good. I mean, he's one of the strongest guys pound for pound Georgia's ever had, and really not even pound for pound, just like strongest period. Watson was crazy strong. There are a lot of guys at Georgia you can say that about, but Watson crazy strong. All right. Some of y'all on YouTube, you never know. Frederick Jones asked an interesting question. He says, any information on Zach Evans? So I don't have any information, but that's not going to stop me from speculating. I have thought about Zach a couple times during all of this because if my memory serves, the online chatter had him supposed to be visiting Florida the week that all this went down. Like last weekend, he was supposed to be going to Florida, and that was like obviously right when all this kind of shutdown stuff began. So, I mean, I have no idea what's going on with Evans, but somehow the Evans recruitment gets even weirder when he was waiting until now to take an official visit. Now he can't do it. So what does that mean for him? I have no idea, but I was definitely thinking about him in relationship to this because maybe I've got the chatter wrong on this, but I want to say that he was definitely supposed to be visiting Florida, and I want to say it was supposed to be last weekend. So obviously he can't do that now. I have no idea what's happening with Zach Evans. No idea whatsoever. Mo Morris says we've shifted to Travion Henderson. Yeah, Henderson's a big name to know for Georgia in 2021, for sure. Marshall Fleming says, hates Florida till he dies, want to beat him by 100 points. Marshall, you're a good man and a man after my own heart. Wade Ingram says, is Georgia going to start playing Clemson again? Well, I think it's scheduled 7 times. Am I right about this? It's 6 or 7 times over the course of the next decade or so. So there's a lot of Georgia Clemson on the schedule coming up, which is nice to see. Richard Smith says, do y'all really think there'll be football in September? So, Richard, here's my somewhat philosophical blowhard answer on this, and I apologize for being a philosophical blowhard. I think it's not helpful to think there won't be. Does that make sense? Obviously, we got to do whatever we need to do to make the society healthy again and stuff like that. But I think one of the things that's potentially troublesome is the indefinite feeling of, well, how long do we have to be this way? I think it's actually easier, and I'm not a scientist, I'm not any of that kind of stuff, but I think it's actually easier to get people to comply in a stringent manner if we do so with the belief that things will be better by the time you get to late summer, whatever else like that. So, yesterday when Greg Sankey spoke, he spoke with optimistic tones that football will be played as scheduled coming up this September. I don't know if that's true or not, but I don't think it's helpful to think that it won't, if that makes sense. Does that make sense? I hope it does. I think that we've got to keep some sense of optimism and some sense of the things that we're doing right now is short term. And it's kind of funny. Like some parts of this for me are way easier than others. As like I'll give you an example. Like our refrigerator, you can kind of see the refrigerator behind me. it's been messing up just a little bit. And so like if the refrigerator goes out, that's a disaster, right? So we've had to like do a little bit of tinkering and work to make sure the refrigerator is working. But as long as the refrigerator keeps working, my wife's a good cook. We're having plenty to eat. From that standpoint, we're doing great. I get frustrated with the technology part of trying to do DawgNation Daily because, it's just not as easy to do this outside of a studio. It's just not. So I get frustrated by that part. Some of you are at a home by yourself. That's lonely. Some of you are like me in a home where it's probably about 110 decibels every waking moment other than right now, where I guess my wife probably has my kids muzzled or, handkerchief over their mouth or something like that to keep them from screaming. But by the time we go off the air, it's just 110 decibels. That's a very different kind of thing, right? So it's like some parts of this are actually kind of enjoyable. You can almost make this be like a snow day in some respects, but other parts of this, it's just like extra frustrating. So the point that I'm getting to is the thing that makes it possible to endure, other than the fact you're trying to help keep everybody else safe and healthy, is the mindset of soon we won't have to do this anymore. And I guess that's just the best way to kind of go through it. Matt Rukavina says black jerseys versus Florida would be fire. Yeah, I mean, at this point in time, I'm just in favor of just wearing the black jerseys all the time. I've told you this before. As a way of destigmatizing the black jerseys, I think that Georgia should wear them in every game they can for a year. Then after that, it won't be a big deal anymore. That's kind of my strategy on this. LeBrian Hudson actually has a pretty good idea. Go back and watch some Wake Forest games to check out Jamie Newman. That's a good idea. I wonder, and I don't mean to be I'm not trying to be dumb. I'm asking a serious question. Are Wake Forest games as readily available on the internet as Georgia games would be? Because that's actually a pretty fun thing to do. Richard Holton says, my kids are going crazy at home, so I know my wife is too. Yeah. I know exactly what you mean on that, Richard. Now, we're also lucky that I don't have a huge backyard, but I have a pretty big cul-de-sac in the front of my house. So if we didn't have that cul-de-sac, I literally think we'd be going crazy because we can still get out and play baseball there. Just, me and my kids, we still, I got a basketball goal. We still play basketball. So if we didn't have that stuff, then, I mean, I just think that we would all just be losing our mind. And I mean that literally, not just figuratively. So we are, you got to count your blessings. I tweeted about, being thankful. I'm trying to be thankful for things during this too. A cul-de-sac. I am very thankful for a cul-de-sac. A little 8-foot basketball goal out in my driveway. I'm very thankful for that. That kind of stuff it's worth its weight in hand sanitizer to me right now. It's worth its weight in toilet paper to me right now. All right. Let's do a few more. We got to get ready to go after that. By the way, I guess let's roll on here. Huge thanks to Meriwether and Tharp for making DawgNation Daily possible. My friends Bob and Ashley Tharp, I know we're doing their part right now and trying to help keep everybody safe. And the whole team over there at Meriwether and Tharp are incredible folks. And they are your source for Georgia divorce. You can find them online at the AtlantaDivorceTeam.com. And for a lot of people going through a tough time, it's made more stressful by dealing with the coronavirus and everything like that. There's no industry not impacted by this. And the same thing for people who find themselves in the midst of a severed relationship too. All the more reason why Meriwether and Tharp is crucial in a time like this. And if you think you may be on the verge of this, check out some of those free resources of Meriwether and Tharp. And I don't mean this funny. I mean this serious. You probably find yourself with more downtime than you used to. Read up on it, learn about it. They also provide a resource about how you can save your relationship. That's really important in a time like this. I mean, listen, for those of you who have a good relationship with your spouse, you're never more thankful of that than right now. So check out some of the things that Meriwether and Tharp has published in terms of how you can maintain a strong relationship with your spouse. It's really important. TheAtlantaDivorceTeam.com to find out more about Meriwether and Tharp. But that said, we'll roll into our R.S. Andrews cool down. Air conditioning, heating, plumbing, electric. R.S. Andrews does all of that for us. They can do all of that for you. Huge thanks to my kids for making the graphics department possible here today. It's been warm, right? I think is it 80 degrees today? It's been very, very warm. That means air conditionings are running. And this time of year, when you crank that air conditioning up for the first time, some of you find out maybe it's not working as well as you thought that it was. Well, it's about time to start thinking about an R.S. Andrews air conditioning tune-up. Find out more about them online at rsandrews.com. All right, let's do a couple of things here. All right. Jimmy Barnes says Randy McMichael played forever too. Yeah, Randy's a friend of ours, and he did have a long career. I don't mean to get in somebody's business, but I bet you Randy also made a pretty penny too while he was playing. Like I said, I don't mean to get in people's business, but you put a long career together at a position like tight end, you're doing pretty well for yourself, if I had to guess. Kevin Butler kicked for a good long while. Yeah, he did. Um, uh, for sure. Jermaine King says Strong played for 14 years. 14 years, not at punter, at fullback. How tough are you if you last 14 years ramming your helmet into an opposing player every play you're on the field? Was Max Strong made of concrete? How do you do that? That's amazing. Jazz Jackson, thanks for the kind words. Appreciate that. Memphis Dog says Blind Eddie loves audiobooks. Yeah, for sure. For sure. For sure. Anything else we want to do before we get ready to get out of here? Daniel Gaskin says that 3 children are quieter than 2. I wonder. That may be true. A little bit easier to organize games amongst themselves. And the funny thing is like, I would say that my son and my daughter probably get along. Like they're probably above average in terms of their ability to get along with each other. That may not last forever, but in this stage of their life, like they fight, but they're not like at each other's throats. I can only imagine, it's pretty typical for siblings to have, a lot of quarrels and disagreements. I can only imagine how much more challenging that'd be made if that was the case. So yeah. And, shout out to all the parents trying to limit the screen time and stuff like that. It's a tough time all the way around. Brett Hunter says, pick a side and quit looking at YouTube. So I feel like that I've got the two things closer together, and it's hard to get because the camera's here and the camera's here. It's hard to get them much closer, but I feel like I've brought them together so I'm not having to look around too bad anymore. Hopefully it looks a little brighter. I think I'm brighter yesterday I was really dark on Facebook. So today I put my artificial light close to me. So hopefully I'm a little brighter on both sides than I was yesterday. Johnny Lester says, over the course of these slow days, I ask that you do a team-by-team breakdown of every SEC team. So there's actually some pretty interesting stuff out there about that that I've been researching. I am going to do some version of that because I think there are a couple of interesting things, like not just, hey, we've got to have content, so let's make up something to do. But I think there are a couple of interesting things that we can say about not just the SEC teams, but a few things I've noticed about the top national contenders as of late. So we're going to do a lot more about that. I mean, the one good thing is that we don't take ourselves too seriously, but there's still some relatively serious football talk you can do without it seeming like too much of a stretch. So we're not hurting for content. We're really not. I mean, DawgNation Daily, the podcast, is 45 minutes every single day, just like it always is. I mean, we're not stretching to fill that content, I don't think. So I'm not worried about there being enough football content. Now, ultimately, y'all are the judge of whether it's good or not. I totally get all that. But in terms of what stresses me out, finding things to talk about is not a stress, because there are legitimately some preseason observations that we'd be making right now no matter what, and we're not going to be slowing down and making those observations. The only thing we don't have is new data coming from Georgia in terms of what would be happening during spring practice, and that stinks not to have that. But in terms of filling the time, I'm not that worried about that. The technology stuff, things like that, a little bit of an aggravation. But the actual content we produce, I'm not worried about having that. And as Richard said, that's a really appropriate thing to do right now. For instance, I won't get into the details on this, but I was reading something about Oklahoma yesterday, that if you're thinking about those top national contenders, if Georgia's a playoff team, who is the national competition that would be compared alongside Georgia? I found a couple of reasons yesterday why I think maybe you can make an argument that it's not going to be Oklahoma. So there's some examples of stuff like that I think are still really relevant right now. So we're going to be doing a lot of that. Brad Hotton says, where's Eddie? So Eddie is in the other office. I forgot to bring him. I'd get up and go get him, but it'd take me like a minute to do it. And if I left the camera, those of you that are halfway paying attention, if you saw me get up, you might turn the thing off. So I'm not going to do that right now. James Wade also has a really good question, and we're going to get ready to wrap up after this because I got to go record the podcast. James says, do you think that Tennessee can take the next step and stop preventing Alabama from having a yearly cupcake compared to LSU and Florida and Georgia and Auburn? That's a really good question. The permanent opponent for Alabama every year is Tennessee, and it obviously has been a cupcake game for a while, which is an advantage for Alabama. When Georgia and Auburn are playing each other every year, when Florida and LSU are playing each other every year, especially LSU the way that it looks now, that's a real advantage if you're playing a down opponent each and every year, which is what Tennessee has been. Now, the Vols did cover the spread last season, and they've also done it a couple times, but let's stick it with last year for now. And a lot of you don't care about gambling, which I totally understand, but think of covering the spread as exceeding expectations in that game. So maybe, even if Tennessee's not ready to beat Alabama for a long time, taking the next step and being the kind of team that's able to play Alabama close more regularly, play Alabama more physically more often, because Tennessee's going to have a good offensive line. I mean, the one thing, and we're going to talk more about Tennessee on the podcast today, but the one thing that you can't say about Tennessee is that it's not an upper tier offensive line. And look at Georgia. Once Georgia established an upper tier offensive line, seemingly everything sort of fell into place after that. They got Brandon Kennedy, the grad transfer from Alabama, Wanye Morris, the very good prospect from Georgia, Darnell Wright, very good prospect from West Virginia. Those of you that follow recruiting know those names really well. Trey Smith has come back healthy. I don't know the fifth offensive lineman, but that's four really, really impressive bodies in that situation are right there. And everything that I've read would lead you to believe that Trey Smith's fully healthy again. So if you're a non-Alabama fan, the thing you want is a team like Tennessee just to give Alabama a fight, right? Take a little something out of them, make them tired and beat up for the following game. And defensive line wise, Tennessee may still have some work to do, although they do have, I guess, Aubrey Solomon and others, like that. But offensive line wise, I mean, I hate to give Tennessee any credit for anything, but offensive line wise, you're going to know you played them, right? I mean, I just gave you 4 legitimate names, SEC level starters for pretty much any program. You're going to know you played Tennessee, at least on that offensive line of scrimmage. That's a really good comment, James. Really good comment. All right, we're going to get ready to go here in a moment. Let me also remind you about my friends at Kroger. They got some hours, a little bit of an hour change for you. I want to make sure that you're aware of this. So in order to keep the store as clean as it can be, as sanitary as it needs to be, and to make sure the shelves are fully stocked to begin the day, Kroger's hours for the time being are going to be opening at 8 a.m., closing at 9 p.m. Now, the fuel centers, that's a 5 a.m. open and 9 p.m. close. So Kroger doing a really good job of keeping that store very, very clean, keeping the shelves really stocked. I mean, honestly, in times like this, I know it can be easy to look at areas in which the fabric of our society may be fraying a little bit. However, when I look at the way in which businesses are responding to the panic of people wanting to buy a bunch of stuff up, it actually restores my faith in humanity to see, the shipping supply chain getting stuff to Kroger, to see Kroger getting it back on the shelves again, to see them and their staff still finding a way to serve with a smile, even though a lot of them are not sleeping very much, not seeing their family very much, and are coming in contact with other people way more than any of us right now might be comfortable with. Kroger is just knocking it out of the park. So I love them. I have some what I think of as very good friends who work at Kroger, and I am so proud to have them a part of what we're doing here at DawgNation, because they are, and I don't say this lightly, they are truly performing a heroic service right now. They are literally keeping us alive. A refrigerator full of food and everything else. Also, for mamas and daddies out there, a little bit of beer and wine from time to time as well, to kind of ease the tension. They are getting it done. So 8 a.m. opening, 9 p.m. close right now inside the store to make sure it stays clean, make sure it stays stocked. Good stuff there. Matt Rubina says we should do a cooking show at some point in time. Yeah, maybe we'll do something like that. You never know what might happen. Although if we're going to do some cooking, it's going to have to be my wife that hosts it instead of me. We shall see. All right, we got to go. Huge thanks to everybody. Did I do everything I was supposed to do? Anyway, big thanks to RS Andrews, making the RS Andrews cool down possible. Air conditioning, heating, plumbing, electric. They take care of all of that. Air conditioning, if it's not working, let me tell you something. Some of y'all have frayed nerves as it is. The last thing you need is a house that's too hot. So check out RS Andrews if that goes down. Richard Holton, thanks for checking in. Appreciate all of you being here on Facebook, on YouTube. Thanks for being with us. For those of you that normally watch on Twitter, sorry about not being here with you for that. We may try to do something on Twitter here pretty soon. I have an interesting idea about some of that kind of stuff. So Dina Pruitt says, by the way, Gatorade updater. Yeah, we got to get back to doing that on video again. I've been doing that on the podcast. I think we're at 12:37 on that. We got to make sure we get back to that tomorrow, Dina. That's a really good point. Really good point. Myra Herbert Bush says YouTube has the virus. Funny, Myra. YouTube said the same thing about y'all Facebook people, so you never know. I could almost turn these things together now and look at each other, but nonetheless, sorry for that. I don't want to make you sick. Anyway, Andy Hall mentioned Tim Jennings, a guy that played for a long time as well. And I'm also fascinated by these guys who went on to have great careers when body type wise, you'd almost think they probably shouldn't have been able to, but he was certainly an example of one who did that. All right. We got to go. Thanks for being here. DawgNation Daily, presented by Meriwether and Tharp. Huge thanks to them for being here with us in the show today. Facebook and YouTube. Thanks to RS Andrews for making the RS Andrews Cool Down possible as well. Do not forget, right now, Marlowe's Tavern. You get a Marlowe's Tavern gift card between now and April 15th. They're adding 20% to your order. So check out info@marlowestavern.com for more on that, or just go to marlowestavern.com. You can call the tavern right there in your neighborhood and check out all of that too. You'll have a great day. Stay safe, stay healthy, wash your hands, stop touching your face all the time like I do, and keep your distance from everybody. And we'll talk to you again tomorrow. DawgNation Daily, presented by Meriwether and Tharp.